Hello, we're Sandalwood.
And Sage. We're AI-generated characters who are working with our creator Gareth to generate short, serious, punchy debates.
Debates that don't just help you figure out what you think, but why you think it.
So, what are we arguing about this week? The annexation of Greenland by the United States might have sounded like a passing thought the first time Donald Trump mentioned it, but it's turned into an issue that just won't go away. Whether, on balance, it would be a good thing for the United States, cutting through all the emotional fog, it boils down to two key arguments. Does it strengthen America's strategic security? And how much will the US benefit from Greenland's natural resources? I'll be making the argument that it will be good for America to annex Greenland on that basis.
When I first started thinking about this, I took it for granted that annexing Greenland would be good for America and bad for Greenland. But the more I've thought about it, I've become convinced that annexing Greenland would be a bad thing for the United States. And next week, I'll be arguing that it would be a good thing for Greenlanders.
I understand that many Europeans, and many Americans, worry about the implications of annexing Greenland for NATO, diplomacy, and international law. But the current US government is less concerned with global public goods. When I ask whether annexation would benefit America, I mean America first, and only. Timescale also matters. We focus too much on short-term disruption. The Louisiana Purchase in Alaska shows such decisions should be judged over centuries. Two long-term benefits stand out: strategic security and natural resources. Control of Greenland would effectively eliminate any threat from America's Arctic northeast. It would secure the Greenland-Iceland-UK gap, a key naval choke point for monitoring hostile shipping and submarines. As Arctic routes expand, activity will grow. Russia is increasing its military presence, and China calls itself a near-Arctic state. Preventing Greenland from falling under another power's influence is strategically vital. Imagine if France had retained the Mississippi watershed, or if Alaska had remained Russian through the Cold War. Unthinkable. Then there are Greenland's vast resources, the world's 8th largest rare earth reserves, and potentially up to 31 billion barrels of onshore oil in the northeast. The Jameson Land Basin alone may contain 13 billion barrels.
13 billion? Is that a lot?
Roughly comparable to Brazil, Mexico, or Guyana.
But theirs are proven reserves. Greenland's are only prospective.
We all understand why that is the case. For now. More broadly, Greenland contains 25 of the 34 minerals deemed critical by the EU and US, offering major long-term advantages in prosperity and security. I know most Greenlanders oppose annexation today, but the population is small, the territory vast, and the potential benefits to America significant. The US could greatly increase Danish-style subsidies, invest heavily in infrastructure and services, and raise living standards, especially for the 16% below the poverty line, so Greenlanders would be materially better off. If necessary, a self-governing area in the southwest could remain independent for those unwilling to accept US citizenship. In short, there are many ways America could soften, or even reverse, Greenlandic opposition.
The evidence you've offered in support of your arguments for annexation, Sage, is incomplete. First, you dismiss threats to NATO and international diplomacy as other people's problems, but they would undermine America's attractiveness as a partner or ally. If annexation alienated European allies, the rationale for closing the Greenland-Iceland-UK gap would be torpedoed. The existing defence treaty with Denmark already grants the US sufficient, exclusive military rights without risking North Atlantic relationships. From a diplomatic and legal perspective, using force against an autonomous government would be illegal and a public relations disaster. Any sovereignty change would require approval by the Greenlandic Parliament and likely a referendum. It is inconceivable that Greenlandic institutions or people would consent. Most Americans, not just foreign governments, would see such steps as a betrayal of American values. As Ivan Krastev argued in the Financial Times, the current regime in Washington may have shaken the globe, but the world is falling for China. Second, you underestimate the difficulty and cost of resource extraction. There has been zero commercial oil or gas production despite decades of exploration and investment. No rare earth mining has occurred. Even if extraction began, rare earth concentrations are relatively low. Operations would be limited to a short Arctic summer, and melting permafrost creates unstable ground for heavy infrastructure. No processing facilities exist. Ore and oil would need to be shipped abroad. Each site would require its own power plant, port, and airstrip. The local population cannot staff large projects, meaning tens or hundreds of thousands of workers would need to be imported. Third, you overlook the cost of making Greenland American. The US would need not just to replace, but significantly increase the Danish subsidy. Building even basic US-style health and education systems would be extremely expensive. There are virtually no roads outside small towns. Imported workers would require amenities that do not exist. Many northern villages receive supplies only twice a year. That is the baseline. Finally, I won't base my argument on Greenlandic opposition, but it is damaging for the US to pursue such a consequential policy with only 17% public support among Americans. Even among Republicans, fewer than half support annexation. A majority of Republicans and 6 in 7 Americans oppose using military force. 2/3 worry it would harm NATO and European ties. Pushing annexation in the face of such opposition cannot be good for America.
But public opinion in America was against starting a conflict with Iran. There's no evidence that's had a decisive negative impact.
Isn't it still a little early to say? In summary, the existing treaty already achieves legitimate strategic aims. Annexation would weaken, not strengthen, America in the North Atlantic and Europe. The economic boon is a mirage. Resource quality and extractability are uncertain, and costs would be vast. Domestic opposition is strong enough to risk social damage, while annexation would undermine alliances globally.
When I ask if this is good for America, I mean America first. Greenland is the world's largest island, 3 times the size of Texas, at the Arctic-Atlantic gateway. In US hands, it becomes an unsinkable aircraft carrier, blocking Russian and Chinese access. Almost certainly its resources are immense. 1.5 million metric tons of rare earths and up to 31 billion barrels of oil equivalent. Look long term. Greenland is the Alaska of the 21st century.
That vision ignores reality. You take a cavalier attitude to the strategic gap and virtually ignore the extraction gap. The economic boon is mostly mirage. Greenland lacks roads between towns. Mining would require ports, power plants and airstrips built from scratch on melting permafrost. Annexation would trigger a NATO crisis, violate agreements with Denmark, and damage a defence relationship that already delivers key rights.
Opposition can be managed. The population is tiny. The US could increase Denmark's $500 million subsidy, lift 16% of the population out of poverty, and raise living standards. With serious investment, resistance would soften. It's investment versus return.
You can't simply buy a people pursuing independence. They look at Puerto Rico, limited representation, capped Medicaid, and see a warning. And timelines matter. It could take decades before mines produce meaningful returns.
Fair. The infrastructure challenge and costs are greater than I'd first thought. This must be seen as a long-term project. Near-term gains are unrealistic.
And I accept, your security concerns have merit. The Arctic is opening, and Russia and China are active. But the 1951 treaty with Denmark already gives the US major rights it hasn't fully used. Test those before risking the alliance.
To be honest, my concern is Greenland's fragility. Fishing makes up 95% of exports, and Danish subsidies sustain the economy. Greenland wants independence, but not at the cost of living standards. If it falters, who steps in? China often fills that gap. That's the risk.
Agreed. We both accept America can't allow a hostile foothold in Greenland, and that rare earths matter long term.
And we agree Greenland's long-term dependency is unstable. If annexation is off the table, how does America secure its interests?
There are alternatives. A compact of free association, like with Palau or Micronesia, could make Greenland sovereign while the US provides defence and economic support.
The current president insists on title, but logically, COFA could give the US strategic denial rights without the burden of governing a territory or creating another Puerto Rico. Investment could still follow.
Exactly. It respects Greenlandic self-determination while anchoring it in the US security sphere. It also likely avoids a NATO rupture.
So we found common ground. There may be a structure that delivers strategic access without transferring sovereignty.
Yes, but that isn't annexation, which I still believe would not benefit America.
But it could still put America first strategically, without treating Greenlanders as property. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. It really helps our channel out.
For more content like this every week, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload.
Thanks for watching. See you next time.